Hello, friends, and welcome to today's Momentum Boost. I'm your host, Adrienne Gold Davis, and I'm thrilled that you joined us today. So, in order to ask our guest a question, all you have to do is type it into the Q&A box or in the chat box at the bottom of your screens. Now, I realize Hanukkah is going to look a little different this year, but there's still so many miracles we can celebrate. And on today's Boost, we're going to find love and light and life lessons in the classic Hanukkah story that's going to warm your heart and your home. Because joining us today is Nili Couzens. Now, Nili is a momentum trip leader. She's an international motivational speaker. She's a Jewish educator, and she's the founding director of Jewish Life Seminars and a past director of the Women's Division in Philadelphia. And of course, I adore her. Welcome, Nili.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. There we go. All right, we're ready to go. So I'm really excited to speak about Hanukkah. For me, this is a huge part of the Jewish holiday system. I'm sorry that I'm distracted. Okay, fine. My Zoom is working now. I went off the screen and I couldn't see what was going on. I'm back. Hanukkah to me is one of like these amazing holidays that is sort of like misunderstood. And I think that getting the real message of Hanukkah just sort of like could blow open your mind as to what is really going on in Judaism. Hanukkah is like the perfect situation because people think that Hanukkah is like the Jewish version of Christmas. So they think it's like this really huge Jewish holiday, this major holiday. And like it's not. It's kind of one of our minor holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Pesach, like Shavuos, where we got the Torah, right? Those are our major holidays. Hanukkah is actually like kind of a minor holiday. It lasts a week. It didn't happen in the Torah. It happened later. It didn't happen in the 5 books, later on in history. And we don't have any like of this special mitzvot like Pesach, we're in synagogue, and Yom Kippur, we're in synagogue all day and we fast and all that. Hanukkah's like a regular day, just you come home and you light the menorah, and that's purposeful. Hanukkah is this time where we sort of get to focus in on this really small aspect of life that actually is really big. I think there's like some saying that like at some point in your life you realize the small things were the big things. And Hanukkah's like that moment of the small things are the big things. One of the times that we really see this illustrated is a story in the prophets about Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Hanavi, right? Like one of the MVPs, everybody sort of knows who Elijah is, right? We have the cup for Elijah on the Seder table, and he supposedly comes to every bris, and Elijah the prophet just looms very large. And there's this really famous, amazing story that happens with Elijah in the book of prophets. In the book of Kings, chapter 19, it talks about how there was a lot of idol worship going on in Israel. And Eliyahu, I'm going to use his Hebrew name, Eliyahu the prophet, was going to put a stop to it. And he told the Jewish people, you need to make a choice. If you want to stand with God, stand with God. If you want to worship idols, go worship idols. Like just make a decision and stand where you want to stand. And there were these over 400 prophets that were like worshiping idols, non-Jewish prophets that were worshiping idols. And Elijah sets up this whole elaborate test. And he says, let's do a test to see who's real. He said, let's both bring up a sacrifice and we won't light the fire. We'll prepare the altar. We'll put the animal on the altar. And then we'll each pray to our God to bring fire. I'll pray to the God of Israel, and you pray to your God, the God Baal, this idol that they're worshiping, and let's see who brings fire. And he said, you go first. There's over 400 of you. You go first. So they bring up the sacrifice, and they put it on top of the altar, and they yell, and they scream, and for hours and hours and hours, and like nothing happens, no fire. And then it says that Eliyahu Hanavi he has the altar and he puts the animal on the altar and he tells the people, pour water over the whole thing. And he says, do it again, do it again, do it again. and they pour water over the altar till the animal is soaking wet and the altar soaking wet, and there was a trench underneath and it's filled with water. And then Eliyahu says, like, God of Israel, answer me and send fire. And fire comes down and the whole thing gets eaten up. The animal on the altar and all the water that was in the trench, and it's all gone. And everyone's like, God is the king. God is the king. Oh my gosh. And they're all freaking out. And then there was the evil queen of the time, Jezebel. I'm sure you've heard that name. She hears what happens. She's one of the bad guys. And she sends a message to Eliyahu and she says, that was fantastic. Tomorrow at this time, I'm going to kill you. And Eliyahu takes off and he runs away. He runs for his life. And you got to ask, like, what's he running for? He just did this incredible thing and he brought the fire and everyone's on his side. Public spectacle, unbelievable. And the commentators tell us that Eliyahu knew something, that when we have the big show, the big sign, it wears off really quickly. Jezebel didn't say, I'm going to kill you now. She knew she couldn't get away with that because in that huge moment, that huge fire show that just happened, if she tried to kill him, the people would revolt. But she said, in 24 hours, it'll be old news. And then I can kill you. And he knew she was right. So he runs away and he runs to the desert and he hides in a cave and lots of stuff happens. And then he comes out of the cave. And I want to pick up the story where God says to him, what are you doing here? And he said, I'm here for you, God. And God sends a huge wind, but God was not in the wind. And he sends an earthquake, and God was not in the earthquake. And the mountains break, and the stones break, and God's not there either. And then God sends a small, thin, still voice. And that was God. God happens in all the small, little, tiny things. Sometimes there's, huge fireworks and like, that's great. But life doesn't happen in the one huge moment. That's not what makes us who we are. What makes us who we are is what happens in all those small, little moments where you think nobody's watching and you think that the cameras aren't rolling, but like, those are the epic moments that make us who we are. A childhood doesn't happen because of one amazing trip to Disney World. A childhood happens in all the moments when you woke up and when you go to sleep and how they come home from school and like what Sunday afternoon feels like and all of those little moments. That's where we become something, somebody. There's a story that I heard from a friend of mine, ETL Goldwicht. He does these terrific videos. And in one of his videos, he tells a story that he was born in Israel. And he moved to America when he was 8 years old. And they moved to Manhattan. And Hanukkah comes, his first Hanukkah in America. He's only seen Hanukkah in Israel. And they're going to a Hanukkah party. So they drive out to a suburb of New York. And he sees Christmas lights for the first time in his life. And they're magical and beautiful and colorful and dazzling. And he's like looking out the window of the car, looking at all these Christmas displays. And he's like, wow. And it's snowing hard, and it's a blizzard and the lights. And it's like, he's never seen anything like it. They get to the house where they're having the party. The two neighbors on either side of the house where the Hanukkah party was have like insane Christmas displays. And the house they're going to the Hanukkah party doesn't have any. So he goes inside and they start the party by lighting the menorah. And he's like, I felt a little embarrassed. Like one dinky little menorah compared to all those Christmas lights. Like it was so lame. Okay, they light the menorah. Party goes on. The blizzard gets heavier and heavier and heavier. Before you know it, there's a blackout. And all the Christmas lights in 1 second disappeared. And the only light on the whole block was the light from their menorah. Until he noticed out of the corner of his eye, oh, that house also has a menorah. Oh, that house also has a menorah. And like, not everybody had Christmas lights. And there were these other menorahs. When you have like big light shining in your eyes, you can be blinded. Very often when I'm speaking, before Corona, when you'd be actually somewhere and they have the spotlight on you, like I'll very often ask them, can you turn the lights down? I can't see the people. Like there's light, but there's so much light, it's blinding. I want it to be like a little dimmer so I can see you. Hanukkah's like that. We turn down the lights. It's no accident that Hanukkah comes at the darkest, coldest time of year. The Jewish response to darkness is we light a candle, but not one that blinds you. It's that small, thin voice, that tiny flame in the window. That's who we are. After the Mumbai massacre years ago, I'm sure you all remember it, one of the memorials they had, it wasn't quite the funeral because the funeral was in Israel, but they had memorials in Mumbai before they flew the bodies back. And one of the rabbis who spoke there said, like, we will take revenge. And someone who was there was like, ugh, like that's not a Jewish response. We'll take revenge. Like revenge is a big no-no for us. We don't do revenge. And they're all wondering, like, what does this rabbi mean? Like, what's he talking about? And then he said, we will fill the world with so much light that we will wipe evil off the face of the earth. That's the Jewish response. When we see darkness, we light a candle, not the kind that blinds you, not the multicolored light show, the thin, small, still candle. And we're told that the light of the Hanukkah menorah cannot be used to read by, like the Shabbat candles, you're supposed to read by them. But the Hanukkah candles, they're these like tiny little lights, and they're just the light of the soul. You're not supposed to use them for anything physical because the Hanukkah menorah is not really physical light. The Hanukkah menorah is really spiritual light, and the only thing you're supposed to do with it is stare at it because the eyes are the window of the soul. So at that darkest time of year, we just want to like get really close to the candles and just let that light, not too close. We want to get close up to candles that we just let that light pour into our eyes so it just fills our soul. And we also start with one and then add another and then add a third, and we slowly build because that's how life is. That's how growth is. You start with one small thing and then you get a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger. And we see this throughout Jewish history. When you look at the stories in the Torah, what we see again and again is that our leaders sort of stand out through these small moments. I'll give you a few examples. Moses, the leader of the Jewish people, right, led us out of Egypt, spoke to Pharaoh, right, the dictator of the superpower of the time. That's a big job. How was Moses picked for that job? So the Medrash tells us that Moses was a shepherd, like all of our leaders were shepherds. David, they were all shepherds. Moses was a shepherd. And it says one day one of his lambs ran away from the flock. So Moses went after the lamb. And he climbs over the mountains until he finds the lamb. When he finds the lamb is drinking from like a little river, like a little stream. And Moses said to the lamb, if I'd known you were thirsty, I would have carried you here myself. And he picks up the lamb and he carries him back to the flock. And the Medrash says at that moment, God said, you can lead the Jewish people. He was chosen because of the small thing he did alone in the desert with a little lamb. Abraham, the first monotheist, the founding father of Judaism, right? The man changed the world. And we still, talk about how we are his great grandchildren today. Abraham went through 10 tests to bring out his potential. And each test got a little harder and a little harder and a little harder. And the commentators look at his life and he went through so many difficult things that they can actually discuss, oh, these 10 things were the hardest. Those were the tests. And they're like, no, I don't agree with 2 and 3. I think these 10 things were the hardest. And like they discuss which parts of Abraham's life were the hardest. And those were the 10 tests that brought out his potential, right? Because the only way your potential comes out is if you meet resistance, is if you're challenged. We'd all like a life that's like smooth sailing. But the truth is our potential is brought out by the tough times. And you want all that to come out in your lifetime. No one wants their tombstone to say she died with a lot of potential, right? We don't want that. We want to bring it all out in our lifetime. So Abraham met with all these challenges in his life to bring out his potential. There's one commentary that says, most commentaries say that Abraham's 10th test was the binding of Isaac, right? His only son, and to have to bring up his son as a sacrifice. Like, what test could be harder than that? And then there's one commentary that says, no, that's not the 10th test. The next thing that happened, that was the 10th test. You know what the next thing was? The next thing was, here's Abraham, right? He brings up his son as a sacrifice. One of the hardest things he's ever done. And at the end, God says, no, I don't want you to do it. Stop. And Abraham and Isaac walk off the mountain. They get back home to the tent. They found out Sarah died. Okay, so the love of his life, his lifelong partner, has died. This was a bad day. This was a very difficult day. And then he has to buy a burial plot for his wife, Sarah. And he knows exactly what he wants. There's this cave, and he wants to get that cave as a burial plot for the family. And he goes to buy the burial plot from the owner. The guy's name is Ephron. And Ephron says he'll sell it to him for a really inflated price. So you know how you can like keep it together on like the really tough days, and then something really small happens and it breaks you? You know, I think it was Woody Allen who said any idiot can handle a crisis. It's the day-to-day stuff that can really like wear you out, right? He survived. He passed the test. He kept it together. And this commentary says, after going through such difficult things, and then the next day someone tried to rip him off with the cave, and he just said, no problem, here you go, here's the money. And he kept it together. It was that small act. That was the 10th test. Because to keep yourself together in the small everyday things, when someone cuts you off or they overcharge you, and you're right, and they're wrong, and you still keep it together, and you still are a mensch, that's the small act that isn't small. That's the small act that's huge. There's another story told about these two women who were going to collect money for charity. And they were best friends in life, and they were involved in this project together, this raising money. And they went to the house of someone very wealthy in the village, and they knock on the door, and the man's not home, and they're really disappointed because they're raising for a great cause. But what can they do? He's not there. And they're going through the town from house to house and place to place. And then one of them sees that wealthy man that wasn't home. They see him on the street. She goes, oh my gosh, there he is. Let's go ask him. And they run over and they ask him. And the guy was a big philanthropist. Of course, I'll support your cause. And he gives them money, and they're able to pass it on to the needy people they were raising for. Fast forward, the women get older. It's the end of their lives. And they make a pact. Listen, when whoever dies first, the other one come back in a dream and like, tell me what heaven was like. Like, I want to know. So whoever dies first, come back to the other one in a dream. They make a pact. Okay. One of them dies, and she comes back to the other one in a dream. And this is what she says. She says, I can't tell you what heaven is like. You're not allowed to say. But I can tell you one thing. Remember that day years ago when we were raising money for charity, and that guy wasn't home, and then we were walking and we saw him, and I pointed and I said, oh, look, there he is. She said, you have no idea the reward I got because I pointed. Yes, we were raising money, and yes, we were looking at, but even the tiniest thing that I pointed, that alone gave so much reward. Everything you do is watched. Here's what the menorah is telling us. It's the little things that are the big things. It's not the huge sound and light show, and it's not the one-time great thing that you did. Even all that stuff's amazing, and do it and go for it and shoot for the fences and go big, and that's awesome. But don't undermine the small things in our lives. It's the small things that really create who we are. There's one law about how we light the menorah that to me is like really pointing us in the direction that Judaism is trying, like this is the ultimate goal. The word Hanukkah literally means dedication. It's the same word as chinuch, which means education. And if you've ever been in my parenting class, right, this is like a major point how chinuch, educating a child, really means you're dedicating them towards like something bigger. What are they here for? What's their mission? You're dedicating them to God and morality and to stand for something in the world. Hanukkah means dedication because we rededicated the temple back to God. We have a law about how we light the Hanukkah menorah. I'm sure you all know, right? There's on the menorah, there's 8 candles, and then there's a ninth. And the ninth is called the shamash, which means like the server candles, like the servant candle. And we don't light each of those 8 lights of Hanukkah directly with the match. We use the match to light the shamash. And then with the shamash, we hold it, we say the 2 blessings that we say, and then we light the candles, right? In order from the first, second, third, and onward. We have a law about when we hold that shamash to the wick of the candle that we're lighting, we're not supposed to remove the shamash until that candle is burning brightly on its own. And if you've ever, done this, there's some candles that light really quickly, and there's some candles that take a little bit longer to light, and you have to hold the shamash there like for another second or two till that candle bursts into flames. So what that's telling us is when we educate our children, which as parents is so much more than book smart, their hearts and their souls and their morals and their personalities and their self-esteem and everything. There's some kids, that raise themselves, and those kids are great. Those kids are easy. They're just like it flows. And then there's other kids, maybe it doesn't flow as much. We need to hold the shamash there a little bit longer till their fire bursts into flame and they can burn independently. As parents, it's our job to notice all of the small little things, the things that make our kids light up, the things that they don't like, the things that make us light up. It's all of the small things that make us be the people that we are supposed to be. So my blessing to all of us this Hanukkah is those small, still lights of the Hanukkah menorah. They should get into our souls, and we should value all the small little acts that we do, the people you smile at, the people you call, you let someone go in front of you, all the little things that you do, they are creating who you are going to be. Don't underestimate them. The small things are the big things. This Hanukkah with Corona, maybe we're not having the big parties. Maybe we're staying home. The small things are the big things. No matter where we are, no matter where we go, value the small things that Hanukkah brings you. And you should have a happy, happy Hanukkah.
Oh, Nili. One of the things that was going on in the chat while you were speaking was, oh boy, I needed that. Boy, I needed that. No, I needed that.
Oh, good.
So thank you. Could you have some time for a few questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, somebody was saying, this idea about all of the grace and all of the growth happening in these small, still moments. In some ways, this whole period of COVID has put COVID, respect, COVID. That was
I like that.
my Freudian slip was showing. All of this period of COVID-19 has put a huge emphasis on all of the small things and in fact forced us to overfocus on them, or things that we don't even usually think about. Do you think there's any message to these times for us, especially as mothers, having to focus on all of these small things because we're all inside the house together?
I mean, of course there is, but I'm a firm believer in, you could have 10 people in the room and they all go through the same experience, but the message is different for each person. Like that famous, example given of, the people standing on 2 different sides of the elephant, and one's describing the trunk and one's describing the tail, and they can't figure out why they don't see the same thing. And because each of us has our own perspective on the same experience. So of course, Corona, COVID is telling us something. I've seen these like little posts on Facebook of like, 2020 is not being added to my age, nothing happened, or like, I hate this year, or like, we're now 5 years into 2020 and all this stuff. And like, I get it. I get the exasperation. Like, I get it, of course, and also that's not Jewish.
No.
It's not Jewish to say, I didn't like it, so it doesn't count. Or I'm hating this. Can it be over already? And I mean, I feel it, you feel it, we all feel it, but just because a Jew feels it doesn't make it a Jewish feeling, right? The Jewish feeling is, this is happening for my growth. This is happening for a reason. What can I get out of this? And sometimes we rise to that challenge and sometimes we don't. And that's okay. It's okay to fail and be in a bad mood and get angry, like that's normal. But I think that to look for the message and to know your message is personal.
Huh.
You will know your message. That personal message, if we're quiet enough and we're asking enough, it will bubble up for you. I actually read, I think it was about Mother Teresa, such a beautiful quote. Someone was asking her how she prays to God, what she says. And she said, I don't say anything, I listen. So the interviewer said, well, what does God say to you? She said, he doesn't say anything. He listens.
Oh.
And if you don't understand what I mean, I can't explain it to you.
Man, oh man.
Isn't it amazing?
I'll be Googling that the minute we're gone off of this. Oh my. Yeah, that's small, still voice. It's so hard to quiet ourselves. Another question. Are we supposed to light the candles in one direction or another, and why? So more of a technical question.
Yes, you are. So you're supposed to light the candles. I believe, I'm like a little dyslexic with this, so check it out, okay?
Yeah.
But what I think we do is we light from left to right, and we light the older candle first. I think we light the new candle first, the old candle first. I think we add from right to left. No, okay, blah.
New candle first.
Okay. Yes, there is an order. You light the new candle first. Okay, fine. So you add the candles from right to left, and then you light them from left to right, or maybe it's the other way. But you're supposed, yes, there is something, and I don't remember, and just like back off.
Okay, so the effect.
There is an order. There is an order.
For all of us on here, because
everyone's posting it. Light from left to right, right to left. Add new candles on the left.
I have to say that every year,
and I read the chat. Everybody else knows but me. I get dyslexic.
You know what it is, Nili? It's because we do it once a year. I have the same questions about the Hanukkah, about the Seder table, everything every year, because the things that, and which is good. It means it's always fresh. Okay, one last question. Somebody.
This is right, but place the candles from right to left and then light from left to right. Thank you, Rachel Weinberg. Awesome.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Sounds like a Jew. Rachel.
Somebody has asked, why do people fear the quiet? There's trepidation to look deeply and honestly enough. What would you say to that?
You mean within ourselves?
Yes.
Oh, I love this question. Okay, this is why I think, I think that we all have low self-esteem and we really need to get rid of it. There's a certain amount that we don't know ourselves. And it's possible that within that area of lack of self-knowledge, there could be a little bit of self-hatred. And if we're harboring that little bit of like, I don't like myself, I don't love myself, we'll be afraid to look too deeply because we're going to be afraid of what we're going to find.
Right.
So we don't want the things to bubble up because we're like a little cringing, a little like keeping ourselves at arm's length from ourselves. So like my favorite God quote, you've heard me say it a million times, if God had a refrigerator, your picture would be on it. God doesn't make junk. He made you. You're perfect. He loves you. You have a flaw. Guess what? That's purposeful. Me too. Got many. How many times did I blow it today? I lost count in the first, 25 minutes I was awake. Like that's just, I don't even want to tell you what my morning was like. It was as I'm sitting here remembering, it was such a mess. Okay. God loves me anyway. Like whoever's listening to this, you took 25 minutes out of your life because you wanted to learn Torah and connect to Judaism. God has nachas from you. God is proud of you. You're trying your best. You're not like, an axe murderer, like Sababa. You're amazing. So like we all blow it and like, it's okay. if we believe that we're good, which you are, then being, still and quiet and listening for those voices won't be so hard. Don't be afraid what you're going to find. It's all awesome.
And I would add that even if what you find in that stillness is something you're not proud of, even that's powerful enough to motivate you to move forward. And you have motivated me and everyone listening to move forward. Nili, you're just such a delight. That was beautiful and uplifting. Thank you. Thank you. And we hope I'll have you again soon in the future.
Thank you.
But to everybody else, make sure you join us this Wednesday, the 2nd of December, because on our next boost, we have the privilege to speak with the scientific inventor of the upcoming COVID vaccine. Why? What's our schlep? Well, I'll tell you. Dr. Drew Weissman's tireless research into vaccine development is probably going to save millions of people from COVID. And his wife, Mary Ellen Weissman, who is a Momentum sister, is a clinical psychologist, and she's been one of his test subjects. So this is straight from the horse's mouth. Now we're going to draw on Drew's career in gene therapy and Mary Ellen's experience in a clinical trial of the COVID-19 vaccine. And this incredible duo is going to share that long and arduous journey that led to Drew's discovery. See, I can call him by his first name. Strategies for staying strong during the next few months and what the future holds for successful cures. So to register, just visit us at momentumunlimited.org and make sure to register for ActionCon. That's our Momentum's first virtual conference, and hundreds of people are already signed on, so don't lose your spot. It's December 6th through 8th, and you'll get to revitalize your soul. We've got celebrity keynotes like Mayim Bialik and Hello Fears founder Michelle Poehler. She's amazing. And Survivor Season 3 winner Ethan Zone. We have tops from top Jewish educators. Lori Palatnik, Momentum's founding director, will be speaking to us. Nili Couzens again, Ruchi Koval, myself. There's going to be intimate coaching sessions. This is really where the need is. Motivating breakouts, places for you to really process, and a workout routine with the Intensati founder, Patricia Moreno, and dance-infused yoga with Kinneret Dubowitz, and a dance party with DJ Rafi, and so much more. I'm exhausted just saying that. So click the link in the chat and register now. It's $36 for all 3 days. Girls, I mean, really. So from me, Adrienne Gold Davis, and all of us here at Momentum, please remember that as we learn and grow together, the highest form of wisdom is kindness.